So welcome. Thank you for being here. This is our first time doing an Ask Me Anything, and it was a very popular request, something that I kept hearing during other events, during our pods, during some conscious conversations, just by email, that you wanted a little bit of an opportunity to get to know me a bit more. And many of you sent questions in, so thank you for doing that. And I've kind of amalgamated them. There was lots of similar questions. I kind of pulled them all together, but we've got a good list to go through. Some personal stuff, some professional stuff, some things that are more philosophical, some that are very specific. So it's a little strange for me that I'm planning to sit here and just talk about myself for the next hour, but I'm excited to do that, and really quite humbled that any of you want to know more about me. So thank you for asking, and let's get into it. So let me look over here to this list of questions that I have. The first one that I thought would be good to touch on is what led me into this field. So my story, I think, is similar to a lot of the stories that those of us in holistic nutrition have. I was sick and I needed a different solution to get better, because what I was doing and what the conventional medical system had to offer was not working. So it was really my own desperation to get back to feeling well that led me to study holistic nutrition. To give a little bit more detail about that, I through at least my teenage years, maybe even my tween years too, I struggled a lot with digestive health. Lots of IBS symptoms, discomfort, pain, constipation, just generally not feeling well digestively. And then also with a lot of mental health challenges. So I started struggling a lot with anxiety, some depression, and then eventually leading into a panic disorder. So I had really frequent panic attacks that were quite debilitating to my life. And for anyone else who's ever experienced a panic attack, it is not fun and not something I wish on anyone. And so dealing with that, sometimes multiple times a day, was really interfering with how I could live my life and the types of things that I could do. So kind of fast forward to my adult years. When I was 18, I had enrolled in college, planned to study architecture. But I was so sick, I couldn't go to classes. I couldn't bring myself to stay in the class because I was so anxious or so physically ill. And ultimately, I ended up dropping out of college in that first year. So that was a huge blow for me, a really difficult decision to make to actually leave school. Felt like a huge failure. And at the time, I was on several medications, SSRIs that were causing me all kinds of side effects, birth control to try to combat different hormonal things that were going on, pain medications for things that I was dealing with. And then the doctors wanted to add on a sleeping pill because now I wasn't sleeping. And I just thought, like, all of these other things haven't worked. So what makes me think that this sleeping pill is going to work? And I just kept piling on the side effects. So that was kind of the last straw for me, where I was like, I need to find a different way to manage my health and a different way to live my life, because my life was getting so small, could barely leave home. Who I was interacting with was getting smaller. Now I was out of school. And it didn't feel right. So I ended up finding IHN. My sister-in-law, actually my husband's sister, had already enrolled. And she talked to me a little bit about it and the types of things that she was learning. She had lifelong health struggles as well that were, she was finding benefit in some of these strategies that she was learning. So I decided to enroll, and I was terrified to do it. I would have to commute to school, which was a little over an hour each direction. And again, I could barely leave home. So the thought of being an hour plus away from home, sitting in a classroom with a bunch of other people, where I already knew I wasn't able to do that at the college that was close to home, was terrifying. But I did it anyways. I just had this huge calling to go and do it. And I remember sitting in the first day of classes at IHN at their Mississauga campus, and I sat at the back right by the door so I could sneak out and run away if I felt like I needed to. And as Elizabeth, the director there, came in and she's introducing herself on the first day and talking about classes. And I just remember having this overwhelming feeling of peace. Like I was in the right place at exactly the right time, and this was what I needed. And I have very, very few times in my life had that intense feeling of coherence, just like everything was how it was supposed to be, and I was on the right path and it felt correct. And so that was really affirming to me that this is what I needed to do. And as I moved through that year of school, learned everything that I could, applied all I could to my health just kept getting better and better and better. And so that was really my start into the field. Again, just trying to reclaim my own health, deal with these digestive and hormonal and mental health challenges that I was having a different way than I had been doing them previously. In a nutshell. The next question that I have here is, can you tell us about your family life? Yes. And so I didn't know with this question if it was what led me into nutrition or if it's about my family now. So I'll answer both. My family life as a child, grew up with my mom and dad and one sister who is just a little over a year younger than me. So when we were kids, as you can imagine, with children so close in age, we butted heads a lot. Now that we are adults, she is one of the most important people in my life, as often happens with siblings, and is actually also a nutritionist. So after I graduated from IHN, I just couldn't stop talking about all the things that I was learning and that I had learned. And so my sister-in-law had already been studying at IHN. And after I graduated, my mom, my sister, and a cousin of ours actually all attended IHN as well and are now also nutritionists and working in the field also. So Julia at IHN, she often jokes that we're like the IHN family because we've had so many people we know go through the program. But that's my nuclear family. Where I came from was my mom, my dad, and my sister. I still live in the same city that I grew up in, very close to our extended family as well. And then my family, I do have a husband. So he and I have been together. We've been married 13 years, we've been together for 18. So we met actually when we were 11 in middle school gym class. And the first time he asked me to date him was when we were 12. And I didn't do it until we were 15, which was when we started dating. And we've been together ever since. We got married on our 5th dating anniversary. And this past fall, we just had our 13th anniversary. Together, we have one biological daughter. She just turned 10 in the fall. And then we also had been pursuing adoption. So sometimes folks in here will ask me, how many kids do you have? And I never know quite how to answer that question. But we were pursuing adoption at one point and actually had a placement with 4 siblings. They were full siblings. So at one point we had 5 kids in the house. That placement did not finalize. So those kids are with other families at this point, but still a really important part of our life. And so even though they're not living with us, definitely still want to stay connected and honor that time that they were with us, and that was part of our story as well. And that period of time that we were going through the adoption process and learning all the things that we could about child development and trauma really did change my practice as a nutritionist as well, in terms of becoming more trauma informed. So I think that both in my personal and in my professional life was really quite relevant. And then I guess family life in terms of like who I am in my family, things that I like to do. I love reading. And that's a really important thing to me because it was something that I actually lost for a little while. As a kid, my mom was also an avid reader and really instilled that in us. She still is, and is a big inspiration for me every year to read more books just to keep up with her. But I had a brain injury about 8 years ago now and wasn't able to read very much after that brain injury. And I really had to limit my reading to just what was absolutely necessary for work in order to be able to pace myself. So I'm really happy at this point that I've been able to get back to that and read for leisure. Last year, I read 52 books. The year before that, I think I hit 75. This year, I'm really going to go for 100. I want to get to those 3-digit levels. So that's one of my biggest pastimes is just reading. And a little bit about my family. If there is any other questions, of course, feel free to put them in the chat and I can circle back around as well. But that's a little bit about us. The next question I had here, can you tell us about the different varied experiences you've had in this field? I can. So I have had many different experiences in the field, and I feel really lucky that I've been able to have all of these different opportunities because I do feel each one has offered different things for my personal growth and development and my professional growth and development. So at the time, I'll go back to the beginning, at the time that I decided to attend IHN and become certified as a nutritionist, I was working at my in-laws' health food store. And it was brand new to me at the time. I didn't know anything about this world. It felt completely foreign, didn't know anything about it. But I got to learn a lot on the fly, and I still love the health food store environment. So I worked there on the health food store floor for a couple of years. And then we made the decision that we were going to expand that business. So we moved a little bit within the neighborhood and we expanded that business. So we had the health food store in the front, and then we had a multidisciplinary clinic in the back of our business. And so for about 10 years, that was what I will call my main gig, where I ran that clinic and managed that part of the business. So working, with the naturopaths and counselors and chiropractors and other nutritionists and Reiki and all of the things that you might see in a multidisciplinary clinic, and loved it. I loved working with the public. I loved all the organizational aspects. I loved everything that I learned from my coworkers and colleagues and all of their different specialties. And it was really, really rewarding to be able to collaborate and work with these different professionals every day. And even those who we had on our health food store floor, all of our staff were certified nutritionists. So lots of collaboration there, and really thoroughly enjoyed serving the public in that way. Flash forward, I guess, to 2019. And the health food store industry has changed a lot from where it was when our family started the business 30 years prior. And now you have to, compete with Walmart and Amazon. And we did lots of things to modernize the business, but we were still just one store. And we made the really difficult decision to close the business in summer of 2019. And really the reason was just the amount of effort that was going into it for the amount that we were able to earn didn't really make sense anymore. So be very frank about that. And so horribly difficult decision at the time. In hindsight, with COVID coming in early 2020, it was probably the best timing. And, all things in divine timing, as they say. So it definitely worked out for the best. I think that period of COVID would have been really, really difficult as a single standalone business. So when we closed the business, I made this decision that I was just going to say yes to every opportunity that came my way in that period of time. And so I did that. So I started doing a bunch of different things at that point. I was working with a company that primarily offered services to individuals who'd been catastrophically injured in motor vehicle accidents. And that was something, again, that felt really, really divine, really well timed. And because my husband, about 10 years ago, suffered in a car accident. He had some spinal injuries, still lives with those issues. He got hit by a drunk driver. And so I really wanted to learn about the industry from the professional side and see how I could offer expertise and help others with their healing as they were going through these traumatic injuries. And then for myself, having my experience with my brain injury as well, wasn't from a car accident, but I felt like that brought some experience to the table that a lot of other clinicians working in that field didn't have, that personal experience of having been injured in such a significant way. And so I actually just left that position because I loved it. And it was a really hard decision to make to leave it fully. I had scaled back to just working 1 day a week for the last year or so. I really found it so rewarding. My clients were amazing. And it was such a different type of clientele than when you're typically in private practice. You know, a lot of my private practice clients are middle to upper middle class individuals, usually frequently women. And that was not my clientele at all with this company. So it really stretched my skills as a nutritionist, and to have clients with varying levels of capacity, to be able to communicate with them, to find ways to be able to educate them and get them on track with their healing, definitely allowed me to learn some things that I don't think I would have been able to learn if I was just in my own personal private practice. So I really enjoyed that role. I will definitely miss it. Also that year, I took a position working in marketing in the nutrition field. So I'd been doing all of the marketing for our business for years. So it was sort of a natural transition again, but I was working with a company who specialized and focused on other nutrition and natural health brands that were either launching or really pivoting their businesses, going in a whole new direction and getting them started with marketing plans and getting the ball rolling in terms of building up their business or building momentum with some new thing that they were offering. So that was really fun too. I've also worked with the Academy of Culinary Nutrition as a program coach for the last 5 years. So teaching some students there. Definitely love that as well. I thought this was going to be my last year. ACN had said that this was going to be their last year with Megan at the helm, but looks like they're going to do another round. So I'll have to make that decision whether I go back in the fall or not. And then also at IHN, where I graduated from, I'm also a student clinic advisor there. So usually, 1 or 2 students at a time who are going through their practicum part of their education and working with a client through IHN. And then I oversee their progress and their protocol that they put together. And what else can I say? I think that's most things. The only other thing I've been doing for quite some time now, I think 5 or 6 years, is NHPPA. That's the Natural Health Products Protection Association. So NHPPA is a not-for-profit in Canada that specifically works to protect individuals' access to natural health products and practices. Sean Buckley is the president. He's at the lead of that business and I shouldn't say business, organization. And he is a constitutional lawyer. So he's looking at things from that perspective. Again, I've learned so much there and really, really thankful for that opportunity. And NHPPA has some very cool stuff coming up in the next couple of months that we've been working hard on for many, many months already. So I would be really excited, any of you who are interested in that, to check it out. And I think that's the main stuff. I've done some other little things in terms of education and workplace wellness, a couple of government contracts, teaching school children, but those are the big ones. And the follow-up question that went along with that about my different experiences is how did I land those different opportunities in the field? And I don't think I have a really good answer for this, to be honest. I think I was just putting myself out there and being confident with what I had to offer. And I think I've seen a lot in this field that nutritionists can be a bit timid about the value that they're bringing to the table. And what they should charge or how assertive they can be about their knowledge. And I was just very sure from my own personal experience, from working with clients for so many years, from the feedback in our health food store, I was very sure that what I was offering or what we were offering as a business was valuable, that it was helping people. And so I think some of that confidence, which again, it just came from experience, did help me to land some other opportunities and feel confident to go out for some of those things like the government contracts and working with the nonprofit, because I felt so assured that we need more of this in the world. We need more people to understand these principles, and that if folks were educated, that they would want to implement some of these things, and that will benefit all of us. And so that's really kind of what led to this decision as well, to protect Networking Nutritionists when the Facebook group became sort of under threat, to move it onto a different platform. I believe in this community so deeply. I think the role that we have in moving our whole world forward is so integral. And I just want to do my little part to continue making sure that that's able to happen. What do I do currently? So my answer a couple months ago would have been a little bit different. As I mentioned, I've stopped a couple of roles recently. But what I do currently, I do still work with NHPPA part-time. So that is some of my time. Obviously, I'm working on Networking Nutritionists. So putting together all the different events that we have here, consulting with lots of members, doing our pods, and then working on outreach. So looking at, now that we've got a year track record, we're in a good place. We've kind of seen what works, what doesn't. So we're in a good place now to start outreach and growing this community outside of what was our original Facebook group. And so that's a lot of my focus right now as well. I do still maintain a private practice as well. So I've kept that up over the years and still currently doing that. Most of my clients in private practice are in two or I guess maybe I'll split it into 3 different categories. So lots of fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, early childhood, that sort of new mom niche. Folks with autoimmune issues, especially autoimmune thyroid issues, and then also individuals who identify as neurodiverse, whether that's autism or ADHD or mental health issues. Do lots of work with that community as well. That's what I do currently. And I'll mention, I also go to school. So I decided last year to go back to school. So I'm attending university right now at Queen's for psychology. And that came from that period of time where we were pursuing adoption and learning so much about how the brain works and child development, but also about our system of child welfare. And I felt like I wished that I could contribute more in a more structured way to that system. And it's thankfully continuing to be reformed, but we've got a lot of work to do. And so ultimately pursuing this psychology degree, and then I'm hopeful to do a master's in social work. And I see myself, not that I'm going to leave nutrition. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I just love it too much. But being able to contribute, some of my volunteer time or working with some nonprofits or things like that in this space with youth who are at risk. So I do that right now as well, going to school full time for psychology. And next question on my list, how do clients find me? Okay, so this is a good question, and it has changed over the years. So when I first started my practice, it was 2010, and it was a different world. 2010 was a different world than 2023 is. So then I marketed heavily. I did all the things that I could do. I was going to local events. I was doing workplace wellness talks and going and doing lunch and learns and all those sorts of things. I was marketing myself online. I was writing for our local newspaper and magazines and putting advertisements there. All sorts of things, all the different types of advertising that you can imagine, radio ads, on the side of a bus, like anything you can think of. I have probably done a foray into that type of advertising at some point. Now, and I would say for the last, I guess 5 or 6 years, my personal private practice is all word of mouth. So it got to the point where I knew what I wanted my capacity in my practice to be, how many people I wanted to work with at a given time to be able to feel like I was giving them the best possible care. And there were too many people coming to me. So I actually removed all of my personal business social media. Don't do it at all anymore. Haven't for 5 or 6 years, not on social media. My personal website doesn't have any information about my services. It just has like my name, a little bit about my history. It's probably not even that up to date, if I'm honest. And like an email address if people want to get a hold of me. 99.9% of people who come to me are because one of my previous clients have referred them. And so that's basically all the clients that I take at this point. And that keeps me at capacity, and it has kept me at capacity over that period of time. So I still believe, even though there's obviously a place for social media, there's a place for, guest blogging and going on podcasts and doing all of these things. Also really encourage everyone to look at what's actually worth it, because some of those things can be make work projects to an extent as well. And if you can reach your goals for your business without having to put 10 or 12 hours a week into social media advertising, then that's okay. And like, we don't all have to do all of the things. And so I'm definitely not doing all of the things right now. My clients find me by word of mouth. Next question. What is your favorite tool when meeting new clients? And is it something you created yourself? Maybe I should have thought about this one a little bit more. To be honest, I think my favorite tool, and I don't even know if you can call this a tool, when meeting new clients is I always ask them, and I have this on my intake form. It's very common. Lots of people do this. I ask them to rate how invested they are, time, energy, and money, to making the changes that they want to see. So getting them to rate those 3 separately, and then talking about that. What does that look like to them? What, if they say 8 out of 10 energy that I'm willing to put into these changes, what does that mean to them? And just dig into it a little bit, because I find that helps to solidify for them the concentration, the effort, the change that's going to be required to do things differently. If you want to have a different result, you got to do things differently. And then it's also something that we can come back to in the future if they aren't being particularly committed, to help to hold them accountable for what their goals were originally. So I do find that something frequently that I'm discussing with clients. Like I said, I have it on every intake, so it definitely gets discussed. And often it's something that needs to be circled back around to at some point to say, do you think that that decision was in line with this intention that you set at the beginning? And having some of that accountability and being held responsible for what their goals are. And did I create that myself? No, it definitely existed before me. Lots and lots of nutritionists use that. All right. As someone working for yourself with different projects on the go, do you ever feel like giving up? Totally. Yes, I think we all do. So this is one of those more philosophical questions, I guess. Yes, I definitely do feel like giving up from time to time. And sometimes that means that I do give something up. And sometimes it means I just need to like go for a walk or have a nap or something and get refreshed. So really for me, it's about having enough time to be connected enough with myself to know which one of those I need to do when I feel like giving up. Do I need to just regroup and refocus? Or is this actually something that's no longer serving me that I need to just let go of in life? Because we're all going to have a little bit of both of those, I think. So some tools that I might use for that. Huge fan of therapy. So definitely talk it out in therapy. Journaling. I love meditating on specific topics and just, seeing what sorts of thoughts will come to me. Using my intuition as well. I know some people will do like tarot cards and things like that. I'm not so much into that, but just tuning into that intuition that I have, those gut feelings that tell me whether I'm on the right track or not. And then going with it. I'm also, how to put this? I'm a really big proponent of making a decision and then just doing that decision. So I think it's really easy, especially in our modern day, where we're inundated with all sorts of messages of people just crushing everything all the time, and they're able to do so many things perfectly. To get stuck in comparing our life to other people's lives, but I don't think it's particularly productive. So for me, when I make a decision, then that's my decision. And I made the best decision that I could in that moment. Sometimes it's the right one, sometimes it's not. But I try to let go of a lot of that baggage as much as I can and just feel confident that as a person, I like to have a high level of integrity. I try to do my best. I try to think through decisions. I'm not going to get it right every time. Sometimes I'm going to give things up that maybe I wish I wouldn't have. That's okay. That's part of the journey. So I would say to others too, just really try to tune into yourself, get good at listening to what you really want. And it's okay to give some things up. But it's also okay if you just need to have a snack and then feel a little better. How do I manage my time doing so much? So this is a topic actually that's come up in a lot of our pods about time management, since we're working, on weekly goals. These are things that we talk about a lot. How I manage my time, I have a few different strategies that I use. So one is my Google Calendar. I have my phone here. I often get told my Google Calendar looks insane, but I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. It looks like this. Everything's color coded. So things that I need to do are one color, things for this job are a different color, things for my daughter are another color. And that keeps me really organized with all the different things that I want to do. And so anything that I have that has a time frame, I put it into my calendar. I live by that. And it's been really beneficial to me. I didn't start using a digital calendar until after my brain injury. And at that point, it was a real necessity because I couldn't remember anything for years after my injury. And so I had to live by it, or I was missing all sorts of important stuff that needed to get done. But at this point, I just love it because it does give me, it gives me more focus with my time. So if I put something in there, I really try my best to stick by it. And so that allows me to organize, when am I going to do schoolwork? When am I going to be having engaged time with my family or with my kiddo? When am I going to be doing these different jobs, or how is this project going to fit in with the other things that I'm doing? And it just lets me map it out and organize it in a really tangible way. So my Google Calendar is definitely one of the ways that I manage my time. And then I also still use actually a physical to-do list. So I write it down. I love the energy of pen to paper. I don't know why. It's different. It feels different. I behave differently than if I just, write it in my phone or write it on my laptop. So I have a physical notebook that I keep around at all times, jot things in as I think of ideas, or as things pop up for different projects. And then usually on Sunday every week, I'll just sit down and write down all the things that I need to do that upcoming week. And then that's what I focus on. Sometimes if it's a particularly busy time, there's lots going on, I'll write my general to-do list of all the things that I need to do. And then I will either color code them based on how important and urgent they are, or I will write 1, 2, 3, 4, a list of what order I should do things in to make sure that I'm staying really targeted with my time. I have a little bit of an ADHD brain. Wasn't diagnosed until I was an adult. But now with this understanding of how my brain works the best, I am able to work more efficiently by keeping myself on track and doing things that constrain me in a way that's really beneficial. So, putting time limits on things in my calendar, giving that sort of artificial deadline benefits me. I work better with that little bit of pressure, and having a really organized to-do list when I do get distracted, or if I feel like my concentration is slipping, I have that place to look back and say, wait, okay, what am I supposed to be working on? Right. And this is why, because it ties into whatever project. So those two things, my to-do list and my Google Calendar, are probably my main strategies for managing my time. All right, another question here. If you ever deal with overwhelm from the number of ideas that you have, how do you move forward into implementation? This is another more philosophical question. Definitely, I do deal with overwhelm. I tend to be, in general, an anxious person. As I mentioned, in my teenage and young adult years, I was overrun with anxiety. So by nature, I'm a little bit neurotic, kind of tend towards that anxiety side. So overwhelm, certainly something that happens to me from time to time. That said, I think it's a little more functional at this point than it used to be. But when I do feel myself getting overwhelmed with the number of ideas that I have, I really try to prioritize what has to be done. So this is a skill that I didn't get really good at until after my brain injury. And I'm sorry to bring that up twice in a row, but it was such a life-changing moment. Like there's times in life where it sort of separates your life into before and after. And that injury was one of those things for me. And so after, I guess before my brain injury, I was the doer. I just went, go all the time, tried to do all of the things. I worked a full-time job while I was still in high school. I wanted to do as much as I could do. And so after my brain injury, I couldn't do that. I physically and mentally couldn't just push through being tired or being anxious or being overwhelmed or, insert feeling. I had to stop because I would start having seizures, or I would be fainting, or so much pain. I couldn't function if I pushed myself past those limits. And so that experience of having that injury and learning how to recover from it was huge for me in terms of prioritizing, because I only had energy to do what was most important. And so I had to get really good at identifying what actually was important, what mattered to me, and what was going to be at the top of the list of things to do with the limited energy that I had. And so now how I carry that lesson forward, if I am feeling overwhelmed with the number of ideas that I have or the number of things that I want to do, it really just comes back to prioritizing. I still, and I think this is true for all of us, whether we've had an injury or not, you can't do all of the things. It's not possible. We can't all be everything. You have to make choices. And so for me, it just comes back to what is the most important. And usually at least a couple of times a year, sometimes 3 times a year, I will sit down and do a big life review and look at all of the different aspects of my life, creativity and family and health and spirituality and relationships and whatever. Look at all those different categories and assess how fulfilled I feel in each of them. And so where I might need to spend more energy, if I'm feeling a little like I'm not getting to express my creativity, I need to spend some more energy on that. And how am I going to make that happen? So I usually do those little check-ins a few times per year. And my Google Calendar helps me with that because I do have everything color coded. So I can go in and look at a glance and see, how much time was I spending on me? How much time was I spending on this job? How much time was I spending on one-on-one time with my kid? How much time was I spending on family? And I can see that at a glance based on how much of those colors are on my calendar. So it helps to keep the balance, if you will. I don't really fully believe in that idea of balance. I think we go through seasons and it's about what feels good at that time, but it does help me to objectively look at where I'm spending my time and if that is serving me and I want to continue that going forward, or if I need to make some adjustments to feel like I'm most aligned with my values. So how I deal with overwhelm from ideas is just prioritization and making sure that my actions are in line with my highest values, just doing those check-ins regularly. The next question I have here, as a nutritionist, do you ever fall off the wagon? I thought this was a really fun question. So I kind of have a two-part answer. I want to say yes and no. So in my history and in my teenage years when I was the sickest, part of my story is that I was self-medicating with some things that are legal, some things that were not at the time, lots of alcohol, and in a way that was extremely dysfunctional, not healthy at all. And so things like that, no, I don't ever plan to fall off the wagon. I have been sober for 13 years, don't ever plan to drink alcohol again, not going to happen. When cannabis was legalized here, it was something I really considered, like, is this something that I would invite back into my life? You know, it's definitely no worse than alcohol. But I ultimately decided, no, I didn't want to open that door. So I am 100% sober, no plans at all to fall off of that wagon. And I do keep myself in check in terms of that decision making, because I do feel like for folks who have struggled with addiction, and I definitely put myself into that category, becoming too complacent with your sobriety is never a good thing, because that's where you slip up. So I do keep myself quite vigilant in reminding myself why I've made those decisions. And so things like that, I feel really confident in. I also, for the last, how long? 6-ish years now, maybe 5, somewhere in there, have been on a relatively restricted diet. I don't think I would recommend this for most people. I wouldn't recommend this for most people, but it has helped to keep my autoimmune issues under control. So after my brain injury, I was having chiropractic treatments that were helping with some cervical issues that came from that. And I was actually injured at the chiropractor. And as a result, I had to go for a CT scan, and they gave me an iodine dye. They were checking for a torn artery. And that iodine dye gave me a goiter. And my family has a huge history of thyroid issues, but that was like the trigger moment for me, and got this goiter, and all sorts of autoimmune symptoms started to come up with my thyroid. And so around that time, I made the decision to go on an autoimmune diet, and it really helped. Done lots of other things, continue to work on getting my health 100% back on track and healing even deeper. But I haven't fallen off that wagon for a long time either. I'm nothing tastes as good as feeling healthy feels. So for me, it isn't even a question. You know, I can go to a restaurant, I can watch other people have these delicious meals. I have no desire to do it because I know how terrible I feel when I consume certain things. So in that way, I don't really fall off the wagon either. Where I do fall off the wagon would be some days I might have a little too much maple syrup than would be advised, you know, a little more sugar on a particular day and overindulge a little bit. Or I might get so busy doing all of the things that I want to do that I just don't eat lunch. And I'm going for 8 or 10 hours throughout the day without stopping to eat, which I don't think is ideal either. And I'm also very forgetful with supplements. I have to try really, really hard to remember to take them. So those would be the places where I feel like, and I don't know if I would say fall off the wagon, but where I definitely allow myself a little bit more leeway to just, live my life. So I don't take my supplements perfectly. I probably forget them one day out of the week. I do let myself have some treats. Treats that I always make at home. So that was a boundary that I set for myself. But I might do that, and I love it and I'll enjoy it. And I think that's okay. So do I ever fall off the wagon entirely? I don't think so, because I've had periods in my life where I have been so unwell. And I remember actually working with another nutritionist and telling them about this injury that I had had, and saying that I remembered wishing that I could get out of my body because it felt so bad. And they were like, "Wow, I guess it's a good thing that you didn't get that wish." And I had never really thought about it in that literal term, like I was wishing to get out of my body and what that means. Um, and so because I've had moments where I have felt that terrible, I'm just so thankful that I'm not in that place anymore. And I'm willing to do just about anything to maintain my health and my well-being. So it's really a core value for me, and something that I prioritize a lot in my time management. So yeah, that's kind of how I approach it. It's my highest priority. If you have any other questions, feel free to throw them into the chat. But this last question is, what's your favorite budget-friendly meal? And it's a little bit of a lighter question, but very specific. And as I was walking home from dropping my daughter off at school this morning, I was kind of contemplating this in my mind. What is my most budget-friendly, my most favorite budget-friendly meal? And I think it would be some sort of organ meat of some kind. So because I've been on an autoimmune style diet for a long time, all the proteins that I consume are animal proteins. I'm not having beans and legumes. I'm not eating grains. So, those are typically the most budget friendly parts of meals or types of meals, but I'm not consuming those. So I think it would have to be some sort of organ meat or offal of some kind. We love heart. So that could be goat or lamb or beef heart. They taste like the best steak. So they're easy to make, definitely like that, and cheap. Also really like Rocky Mountain oysters, or what are bull testicles. We also do lamb testicles sometimes, and we'll make them into little nuggets. And so my daughter we call them lamb nuggets, but all of us know what they actually are. We don't do it a lot because it's not my husband's favorite thing, but my daughter and I really enjoy it, and definitely an inexpensive meal. And I might even put sardines or something like that on there. Like those are a pretty cheap, good meal that I can get behind. So some sort of inexpensive animal protein based meal is probably my favorite budget friendly meal. So that was our last question. So I'm just gonna go, give me one moment. I see your comment here, Erin. Thank you. You feel like we have a lot in common. I love that. I think there are a lot of commonalities between nutritionists in general as a whole cohort. So I definitely find that the more that I meet and talk to you folks, the more I can see that we have in common. So I guess that's it for today. Hopefully you learned something and this was helpful in some way to get to know me a little bit better. I think we will plan to do this again. Even when I was speaking to some of the members about what questions they wanted to ask, they were saying, this is what I want to know first, but I have some ideas of what I might want to ask you later. So maybe in 3 or 6 months or something, we might do this again and go a little bit more in depth. But generally speaking, I'm pretty open book. So any way that we might be connecting, whether that's in a pod or during conscious conversations or at a networking event, I'm very open to sharing my experience and what I bring to this field and whatever I'm able to offer and share in terms of the experience that I've gained, I'm happy to do so. That is really what lights me up. And that's why I'm here and putting this effort into building and maintaining this community in networking nutritionists. I think all of us have so much to learn from one another, and by sharing our experiences and opening up and being willing to connect, I think it only makes each of us stronger and helps us uplift our industry as a whole. As one of us does better, we all do better. So I appreciate you for being here live with me, and for everyone who will want to watch this on the replay. I know a lot of you intended to watch the replay. And for everyone who sent in questions, thank you for doing that as well. And until next time, have a great day, everyone.